Well, welcome to the Dream Labs, Dr. Contrast Live. I just thought I'd take a moment here to say hello and again, to spend a little bit of time today, I think kind of reversing gears a bit, and we're going to throw some rendering materials. For example, last week, probably on Tuesday, we put together a series of concept sketches for instrument panels using a little bit of multimedia and getting in some technique work for opening up the process of developing an automobile interior. I think today's stream, I'm going to go really kind of go roll full circle and go right back into just some good old-fashioned basic thinking systems on developing form and using just very simple shapes and getting some ideas down. And I think today's subject matter is going to be interesting. You know, looking at the Alexa Dot. Yeah, it's a simple little cylinder and so forth, but I think we can go a little further with developing some shape with that and putting this together very rapid, good constructive sketches with a little bit of tone added maybe as we go through the process here. So bear with me, I'm just going to start looking at some very lucid sketches here, very quick, but at the same time generating some ideas on letting the geometry work for us, and then we'll explain some things as we go through the process here. So let's get this guy started. Let's kind of go right back in here and just begin to build some ballpoint pen and some little bond paper sketches. Start out very lightly here, just going through the process and get this guy based, settle it in just a bit, taking that same form, almost like a cylinder shape, and just bending it a bit. Going back in here, come up over the top, add some more elements to it, just begin to bring up the line weights a touch, draw through it, put some structure to it. And I think that's one of the things that's really important when you go back into the drawing process here, how to really begin to develop what these forms begin to do, and looking at it from the point of view of following the fact that, you know, every constitutional shape we see, everything we draw will have some sort of a constitution behind it, and really the structure is really very important. So here's the first pass here, just doing a very simple series of very round shapes, getting some form into it. Let's just add a little bit of a banding to it here, maybe a little bit of an offset, just a little touch here. Kind of take a little bit of shape into it, and draw through it again. And then just very rapid set of sketches here. Same process. Let's go back and just the same overall form. Plant this thing, get it grounded, and come back in on top. Change that same character maybe on top here. Same form, a little less sweep to it. Just very simple. Running that through. Coming back in again and then again. Maybe going inboard on this thing. And coming down the center line here. And taking that same parabolic curve and just put a bit of shape into it so it gives it a little more mystery. So there we are. Just a little bit more shape, a little bit of contour down at the base of this thing. So very simple sketches, but nonetheless, going through the thinking process of putting these together, I think it's very, very important, for example, that we begin to look at what the structures begin to do. Structure meaning there's a center line going through this process. We build the circles around that. And we come back in and develop shape. And again, the subject today is just looking at Alexa, maybe getting a little more flamboyant or a little bit more exploratory with some of the shapes and surfaces we can develop with it. So let's go back in again and just develop a little bit more contour in this guy. Just a little bit more of a different shape to it. Just working through it. Notice nothing's really pinned down or extremely tight and so forth. Just nicely done in terms of putting together a feeling or a concept here. So let's go back in again. Same inclined upper, just a nice parabolic, maybe a conical shape, just a nice shape to it here. Come back through the base, and then float it just a bit. Bring it underneath here, just give a little extension to it. There it is. Come back down again through that center line, which is right here. You might be wondering, how do I know that that's my center line? Because again, if I put this into a frame of a square, the face of a square, then I begin to bisect it. That's usually where that center line is, and I can use that as a drawing tool or an element to work with the shapes here. And if I want to add something to it, for example, in the sidewall, and come back and build off of that shape very nicely, and let it blister into it. Maybe that's a little on-off knob of some sort to kind of work with, or a voice system that kind of pick up some things as we go through the process. But again, look how simple those sketches are. Just nicely, squarely done. Again, really analyzing and thinking very seriously about how to build a shape. I think I've always said this from the drawing perspective. I think it's very important to really kind of stop here and take a look at and analyze what this comment means. It's really critical to build a drawing. You build a drawing in 2 dimensions. Number 1, you begin to understand its structure. Number 2, because you understand its structure, you begin to develop the surfaces or know how to illustrate it. So it all works together in harmony, and I think that's one of the things that we always like to look at. In my streams, for example, I go through a whole variety of basic sketches such as this, and into rendering, then some more finite work and more complete work, and right back down to basic fundamental thinking. And I think when we lose sight of that fundamental thinking, from my perspective anyhow, that's when it becomes extremely tentative. I never want to lose the fact that whole structural side is always active in my mind when I'm drawing here. So let's go back in again, and I'll just add some more, a little more to it here, just a little more detail, and just add some things, a little bit of a split line here that can do there. Let's go back to a little elevation side. Maybe it's a different geometry here. Maybe it's this. Give myself some confines, go through it, and then come right back in here, split it just a bit, bring it down. It just changes chemistry. Maybe it's just a simple elevation like that. Maybe it lays on the table in an elevation like that. And then we just kind of go through it. There's my center line. There's my form again, down to ground base, and just a little bit of a stand to it. Maybe that's just another approach to what this shape can be doing. Let's just put a split in this thing, kind of separate it just a bit. Now, when you have those forms put together, now it's really interesting to come back and let's change gears and go to a little bit of pencil work. Put a little bit of tone in this thing. Let's come back in here with the side of the pencil and just start to use some very basic little shading systems to kind of put some element into this thing. Running through it, and picking up the chords just enough. Come back in again, a little more tone. A little more body to it. Now notice how simple that is. It begins to develop that shape. Come back, turn it side just a bit, away from the light source, put a little more core to it. Come back in again, a little more core to it, and then come right through the center of this thing and get that shadow using that side of pencil. Look how very simple and melodic that becomes. All of a sudden you have the form coming out of the structure. And I think that's what we want to get across today in this stream. Let's go back and put a little more sharpness into this thing. Now we can come back in through here, draw through it just a bit more. Come back in and just put just a bit more drop of a shadow here. Just kind of give us that form. That shape is going to be very true to shape and form here, because that surface being concave, it'll literally take that shadow and drop it and roll it back toward itself. So that's what that's doing here. Let's draw through here. Come back a little more content here, a little more tone, a little more pressure. Run it through. Indicate where the light source is coming from. Come back in underneath here again. Pick it up on top. And again, come back in through here. Maybe just enough of this. A bit of tone change. And that's where the speaker system might be. A little bit of texture change to kind of indicate that's where that might be. And all of a sudden, there's a little thumbnail sketch that begins to tell our story here. Let's come back in just with more detail in this thing. A little more tone. Fill it out just a bit more. Let me turn this upside down just a second here. A little more shadow. A little more tone in this. Draw through it. And just deepen up that shadow just a bit more. And again, there it is, gang. What indication where the highlight's coming from. Run that right through the shape itself. A little bit of a couple over here on that side. There's a quick little thumbnail study based on just structurally putting together some of these speaker systems. Let's go back in again. Same thing over here. The side of pencil, tone through it. Tone through it. This might be a texture change down below, so we'll take this form, go a little deeper with the side of pencil. Stain that in. Just get it started to block it. Add some definition in line. Pick up the center line. I've got shadow in through here. Notice how I'm using the structure now to help me illustrate what the forms are going to do. Very, very all compatibility. It all works together in harmony. So let's kind of put that together for just a moment here. Look how that simply by understanding the geometry, how to build a structure, and then take it into a rendering format, or in this case, a sketch rendering of what the forms might begin to look like. So let's take it a little further into the recess, shadow, and then right back in the light source, and just release it. Come back in again. Pardon me for rotating the paper a bit here. The more line weight in through here, take it through the shape. The more shadow definition in this form, and just a touch more of this side of pencil, just to kind of give a little bit of a recess in here. Line weight change, draw through it at the base, come back in again. Notice, I'm not really concentrating, I'm doing a lot of filling, I'm just kind of pushing together some elements here that really begin to tell a story. Maybe this could be a different color or a different material change in here. That's fine. That's why the pressure change and going a little bit darker. It changes the character. Notice how I'm following the contour of the shape as well. I'm coming right up out of that and developing a very simple contour here. Draw through it again. Just give myself a little bit of structure. And again, up on top here. A little bit of contour. little dots and dashes here to give it kind of a speaker look. And there I am. There's another little thumbnail study there of putting these guys together. This little elevation. Let's put that ground laying down. Settle it in. Come back in and draw right through it. A bit of tone here. Now separate it. More cone. And to highlight, run that through. Bit of an offset here. Maybe that kind of just darts in there. Gives you a little more impact. There it is. Again, in through here. Separation. And coming right back in. Just a little more fluidity here. Come underneath this guy. Dark to light. Run that right through. Into the shadow. Back into highlight again. Notice, very simple forms, but they just kind of ring clearly because you understand what the geometry is doing. Very interesting processor to deal with here, gang. So let's sharpen the stick a bit. Let's go into this guy. A little bit more tone. Let's change the light source, coming in now from the right-hand side. Now we'll just begin to look at this and just tone through it very quickly. Release it into light. Pick up a little bit of the shadow on this guy, since it's coming off the surface. Notice I'm using the side of the pencil just to model in some of the shapes itself. Come back in through here again. Side of pencil, a little bit more shadow on this guy. Take that shadow inside that little base, come bring it back on itself again. Turn this upside down. A little bit of weight change in here in the lines. Again, take this back again over here. A little bit of weight change. And over here, a little dark, a little bit. This lip might be a different material, so we're a little bit darker with it. As we come around the surface, notice I'm following the contour itself. It's conical. Drawing through it. And we're passing through here. And just begin to release it right back in the light source. As I turn this sideways just a touch. And then in the light. A couple of indications, maybe light and so forth, where that is. And again, maybe this is a bit of a hollow in here. Again, render it and such into underneath. And bring it right back up to the light source again. And a little bit more shadow in this guy. Draw through it. A little more shadow here. A little deeper. Bring it into the form itself. And again, notice how simple these sketches become, because now we're looking at it from the point of view of being able to see what the structure does to help us determine how to illustrate the shape itself. So there's a first page of just nice little thumbnail sketches on this Alexa process. And I think the real task today is to get away from maybe the dot look. You know, it's a very compressed cylinder, but we can bring that up to speed a little bit by putting a little more shape into it and be a little more adventuresome with some of the forms we're dealing with here. So let me sharpen this pencil for a moment, and we'll come back in. There's phase one. Let's put that aside. Let's pick up another set here. Maybe it's more geometric. So let's go back and get a little bit less organic and be a lot more. Oh, pardon me. I'm losing the clip here. Maybe we're starting to look at something that's a little less cylindrical or organic, and it's much more structural. So let's kind of just block it in. Again, let's go back to ballpoint pen. I'm sorry. Ballpoint pen, run that through. Let's get a basic form down first. Notice I'm just letting the pen walk across the page. Begin to develop some of these surfaces, just very, very quick and lucid. So there we are. We've got that going on here. Let's kind of bring this into play here. Let's learn to break that shape through. Break up the surfaces. Pardon me again. I keep losing this. There we are. Clip, there it is. Come right back over the top and run it right through. And maybe there's a little split line in this as well. Let's put a little more geometry in this. A little bit of sidewall change. But yeah, again, real quick. Just exploring the geometry. And again, let me stop here for a moment. Exploring the geometry, that's to me, a very specific term to deal with, because when we explore the geometry, what I'm referring to is understanding what the shape is made of. It's more of a cube, it's got some crown to it, it's got softness to it, but that's how you explore the shape. Why is that necessary? Because the more you explore the shape, the more you begin to understand it. The more you understand it, the more clearly you can illustrate it or begin to put tone to it or surface work. So that's the reason we're taking so much time to develop some of these surfaces in terms of being able to understand what the geometry is doing. So there's sketch one. Let's go back again, the same view, turn it just a bit. more hexagonal. Let's take that shape right in so you can see a little bit more of what that form is doing. There it is. Notice, really quick. Nothing's really connecting here. I'm not being very slow, and I'm being deliberate. I'm being extremely lucid just to get the forms to kind of begin to fall into place here for me so I can begin to now that I see the shape beginning to emerge, I can come back in and come right back down through here. Let's get this guy here. Let's find where my center line is. I'm going to come right through the middle of this guy, but yet split it. And split it. Come right back again, pardon me. Up on top, roll that over, take it back, and then drop it in. And again, drop this in. Notice there's a recess in there, so I'm going to take that shape right through and literally split it. So now I've got that going through it. And that might be a simple design change that we need here for this shape to work. There's a little bit of highlight there. But again, notice the geometry change. Same basic form, but letting perspective do its work and being very lucid in the sketch and seeing how these connections begin to work. So, and there's an offset. We'll illustrate that in just a moment once we get back into it. Along this belt line, maybe we have a little bit of a little change of pace here. Let's do this. Let's kind of kick that back in just a touch on one side only. And second thought, let's take it through and use that transfer to work with. Now it's doing that. So there you are, just a little design change here. Now that means that's going to change this, which is now going to change that. A little more definition in that shape. So there we are, that's that guy. Now let's stretch it a little bit. Take the same form and just begin to expand it just a touch here. Oh, pardon me. And add just a bit of an organic scallop on top of that to change its character, soften it off back in here just a bit. Let's put a recess in it. Really make this thing sit back. There we are. And all of this area in here could be speaker related right there. That this little scallop change could be where the speaker is located, and we'll get to that in a moment. Let's go vertical geometrically here. Again, a little section change in there to kind of tell us what the forms are doing here. So let's kind of go back and what we did in the first case. Let's put a little bit of tone to it here. Let's pull the light source off to one side here. Just use that pencil to just kind of scallop in some form here. Changing pace, working with the system, tone it in. Working back to light source. Come back up on top here, run that through. And just a little bit of tone change up front here. Again, underneath it, notice just a little bit of pressure change, and all of a sudden we've defined what that surface is doing. Coming underneath, there it is there. Same thing on top here. Let's kind of take that through, probably turn upside down. A little more of a weight change. Notice, let me just bring that forward. Look how very quickly that came together as a result of using the side of the pencil, understanding the structure, and getting things done here. Now let's go back in here and put a little more definition, drawing definition to it. Another part of my hands here. Come around the bend. Let's go from dark to light. Tone this a little bit more into the surface. Becoming more and more believable as we work with it. Be very lucid in through here. Let's take this guy and change a little bit of the character here. Let's do this. Let's recess that in. A bit of a drop on top there. Let's get that fillet to work, that little highlight through there. There it is. That gives me that radius back. Look how that's starting to come together here for us. Now let's come back in here, give ourselves a little bit of separation. Run that through. And for what it's worth, let's just stain it in. A bit of highlight. Turn on its side. Another pass here. Just going to put more tone to it. I'd start to call this thing just a little bit more of a full sketch study here. A little bit of rendering into it, sketch rendering. Nothing really highlighted in terms of being specific, but a concept nonetheless. It's got a little more tone to it, a little more distinction. So let me sharpen this pencil for a moment here. We'll come back in and add just a little more detail here. Back here, there's a little on and off switch of some sort that sits back there. And just put a bit of ventilation or a system, some speaker system in here. Just draw through it. A little more weight change as we come into that. And that will tell us where that sound amplification is coming from in that area right there. Just a very simple little sketch study here. Let's plant this thing on the base. And there it is. Now the other one could be as bold as, let's look at another alternative here. Could be as bold or as complete as doing a little thumbnail sketch such as that. And the other thing we could do is look at this, just being very straightforward. Into the shadow, come across, tone it first, find where the splits are, then come back in and define it. Watch what happens when you put a little line thrust into this thing. So where the recess is, so let's take that right back in there. That could be the sound box. Comes from this area, this little recess. And at the same time, the drop off is here. So let's kind of tone that in. That bevel cut. You're going to take me inside the shape. Inside the shape to that. Just kind of put a little more accent on that side, into light. Accent into light, and again around the corner, accent into light. Secondary line, run through it, tone it. Again, just a simple little touch here. Let's do this. Very minimal. Let's drive the shadow back inside there. Again, a little bit of highlight here, radius rather. Now I'm going to get this real minimal. Now I'm going to come right back and just concentrate where this recess is. This cutback. And with very little effort, look how that shape is beginning to read. There it is. Very little information, but I'm just trying to telegraph where the important aspects of the sketch are taking place. There's a very deep valley or recess in here, and these two butterflies come together and form this little sound bar on the ends. Oh, pardon me. I'll put a mark on it. Let's make it work. A little bit of highlight here and across the top. There we are. Very simple, straightforward materials. Let's go back and look at this guy down below here. Same process. Let's quickly just illustrate where the effort's going to be. Keep it minimal. Across the top. Draw through it. Hit that accent line. And drop the shadow in there. This is a real deep scallop. I'm just going to drop that in. That scallop comes across the speaker form itself and just gives us this little bit of a shape distinction. Take it away from just being a rectangular dot. Or pardon me, cylindrical dot. Pardon me. Now underneath, a little bit of shadow change here. That tells where the form goes. Underneath again, onto this side. Let's just do this. Add a little bit more detail to it. Come across this thing. Put a bit of softness in it. And for what it's worth, little bit of speaker texture. It kind of tells what that shape is doing. So I hope this is helping here, guys. Just kind of put together some really quick little rapid sketches here on this whole speaker system, looking at Alexa. Let's put a little more of this into it, kind of give it more cant to it. There it is. Draw through it, a little more explosiveness in it. Let the lines kind of strike through it, and just like you've done it very, very quickly and very lucidly. So let's go to this last one just a bit here. Now, I'm going to go through the whole process first. Let's kind of just tone this in. Let's get the design change here, a texture change or material change. It's going to be this, a little darker. We lose it there. The speaker system itself a little deeper. Let's take that thing and show where the shadow is on that disc. Let's run that across that surface and show that that's a raised surface. And it comes again up right here, just a little bit more tone to it there. This undercut. Working with the surfaces, bring that out, tone it, and again begin to lose it. A little bit of line weight change off the back side of the form here. And again, a little more cylindrical shape, so let's kind of take that guy and just give it a little more touch. All of a sudden, look how that form just comes right off the page in terms of working with the structure. I mean, that's the thing that I really developed here today about these little thumbnail sketches for some Alexa speaker systems. Working with the structure to understand it, which then in turn gives you the understanding of how to develop the surface, how to work the surface, and how to begin to illustrate it with the line weight and tone and so forth. So there's phase two. Let me just kind of clean this line up a bit here. I'll come back in, put more tone to this, soften it off just a bit more, a little bit of a radius in here. And I think a little thing here that I want to point out, notice this little section right down in here. When you turn the corner on a surface, that little bit of white there tells you where that highlight is, or the radius is in the manufactured part. That's the important thing about it. Hey, hi Brett, how are you? Nice to see you. How have you been? Doing well? I'll just take a moment here and wait for your response. Really nice to have you join us here today. Thank you so much. Hope you've been doing well. I got some of your most recent notes, and I want to make sure got some free time. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you joined us, Brad. Have any questions along the way? I'm just going through a series of really quick little conceptual structural sketches here on Alexa speaker systems. And last week we did some interior instrument panel work for vehicle design, a good rendering load, so to speak, with pastel and marker. So I thought we'd start today with just a nice little simple turnaround on just basic ballpoint pen sketches and looking at some of the Alexa systems and speakers. And this is the first plate I did, just bring up to speed. Just generating with a ballpoint pen, getting the ideas down, and then coming back in, for example, and putting together a series of little thumbnail sketches using ballpoint pen to develop the structure, then putting a bit of tone to it to describe some of the shapes. So that was sketch one. Just completed on sketch two, and I think we just mentioned here you have got a few questions. Fire away. I'll be sure to listen. While you're doing that, let me put that aside. And we get the third palette in here, third set of sketches. Let's go there. Any questions here? Hi, Brad. I've decided to go back and study my fundamentals, so forgive me for not attending you. Oh no, hey, Brad. There's no need to apologize at all. I realize you've got a very, very busy schedule, and last time we contacted one another in Discord, I knew you were going through some very difficult times. So no need to apologize. I'm just here to help you as much as I can. I'm glad you had taken the time to tune in today. And that last sketch you did looked really good. Fundamental materials, that's what I'm going through today, Brad. I mean, I'm always going back and forth between rendering and sketching and ideation studies, and I consider this today an ideation study. And I'm glad you've joined us, and I hope this is of some help to you. No, I mean, you've got to, don't ever get to the place, you made a comment, I think in one of your Discords about the fact that you felt like you were inadequate or your skill set wasn't there. I think that's completely false. I want to make sure you get that really squared away, that you are not inadequate. You're going through the process of learning this cycle. It's very difficult. It's extremely demanding. People do not realize how much effort it takes to become tuned into creativity. So I commend you for your honesty, and I commend you for the fact that you do have the skill and do not look back or give up on it. So no need to apologize. No problem at all. Let me go back and start a series of sketches here based on what we were talking about earlier. Just again with a ballpoint pen, just start to look at some things to work with here. Let's go back in, start the structure, work through it, begin to develop some of the forms, change its character just a bit, and back down into the base. And there it is. So it's a little bit of an off cant. So if I were to put that center line through this, it's this, coming in that area there and just dropping back. There's my structure. That's telling me exactly what I need to know. Let's come back in and put some surface to it. Nice and simple. Into that base, into that. Now let's put a little bit of a secondary line in there. Notice I'm going real lucid here. And I'm going to cut that back just enough right there, and I'm going to cut that back. So this cone, this surface, sits on top of this lower surface. I'm going to connect the dots a little bit, and just a touch with a little bit of some pencil work. So I'm going to develop it first. Let's go back in through here. Let's go the other way. Notice, really just staying nice and easy, nice and fluid, not getting all caught up, for example, and trying to be really historically expressive, but just very simple, looking at ideas, line weight changes, and just developing the shapes and forms. And let's go through it again. Let's come back into this. Maybe it's a nice little bulbous form like this. Come off the top, out on the base, a little design line in this guy. Now we had another one on top of that. Maybe we changed the whole concept. Now it's that. Into that. All of a sudden, that changes the chemistry quite a bit. Just put a little baseline on this thing. Again, looking at different shapes and forms and just developing very quick ideas here. I hope this is making sense for you. Brad, is it helping at all? Or am I going too quickly here? Please help me out. I want to make sure that you get the maximum amount of time and effort here today when I'm going through this whole process. So. Anything at all you want to kind of stop me on? Yeah, I'll just come back in through here. I mean, look how simple those forms came together. I got you for the most part. All right. What am I missing? What's the other part that's missing here, Brett? So, any comments or questions here? Please feel free. I'll take the time to address them since you're on online here. Great to hear from you, and I'm glad you're on board. I got for the most part. Okay. Anything else you want to add? Okay, you don't understand how I made the curves follow the form of the sketch. Well, what happened to this, how I got there, Brad, was looking at this. For example, this surface, when you begin to generate a shape here, and you develop that form, and lay that cone in place, what I'm working on is this. There's my axis through here and through here. So I'm building those shapes and those curves around the conical forms that the center line is telling me to do. Same with this one, center line through this thing, coming around the circles, around the circles, and around the circles. And those curves are telling me how I'm going to be balancing the shape or developing the shape based on the structure of the axis that it's built on. Does that help to make sense or not? So far, so good? So as you're pondering that response, let me go back and just kind of put some more definition in here. Draw through it. Again, the axis, it's there. Comes in and then drops right through the center line. That guideline, that center line is critical. I mean the curves that wrap around the shape, not the silhouettes. Oh, the curves that wrap around the shape, that's following the geometry of the form that I'm working with. For example, the geometry of the form that I'm working with in these sketches are conical. They're cones. So if I've got a basic form like a cone, for example, what I'm doing is this. I'm taking that same concept and just for what it's worth, if it's a conical shape, let's do this. If it's a conical shape, I'm doing this. Here's the cone. What I'm doing is following the shape by going in and saying, I'm going to cut it off here. I'm going to follow that form by doing this around that cone. And I'm going to come back and do this and follow that cone. Now I'm going to come back and reverse that cone to get down to the bottom of this shape. I'm going to take that form, come right through it, and let that round silhouette honor the fact that this cone is a round surface. Does that help me make sense now? So when I change the axis, for example, and I've got that shape doing this, and I cut into that cone by putting a circle into it, I'm still following that. Let's put the larger circle down here. I'm still following that contour. So when I go through this thing, I'm saying there's my center line, and here's my contour. And this part might be toned. That makes sense? So the shape I'm working with, in this case, in this last series of sketches, 3 were conical. Let's bring this back up. 3 of these shapes are built on cones. Cone, positive, cone, negative. Cone, positive, cone, negative, or cylinder, rather. Again, conical up on top, and then cylinder, conical down below. See how I'm working with that shapes now? So you just look at it as if a 3D object. Absolutely, really well said. It's a 3-dimensional object while I'm sculpting it. And again, the reason the 3D object I'm working with, Brett, in this case is a cone, cones and cylinders. In fact, all these sketches, I'm going back and in essence, I'm working with just the basic geometry of geometric solids. So once you understand that, that's why, if you missed a few moments of my stream here, what I was getting at in the first few moments was a very simple principle. If we can understand the structure, how we build it all and put it all together, if we understand the structure, meaning in this case, it's a 3D object like a cone. The more we understand that, it's really interesting how all of a sudden that begins to develop how we develop shape and surface and contour. So it all works together. And now I've got another question. I'm really struggling with cylinders, so this is a cupcake for me. Oh, very good. So cylinders, I'll go back to in a moment here. Let me just finish these sketches out and we'll go back in here. Oh, now that I've got the family of forms here, let's go back and just put a little bit of surface into this thing. Light source again coming in from the left-hand side, or side of pencil, tone it, and then release it. A little more pressure, tone it, and then release it. Line weight change, line weight change. Emphasize where the recess is. Come back in through here and pick up that secondary scallop. That's where that undercut is. Let me turn this upside down for a moment here. Into the base. Right back to light source. Draw through it. Come back in and emphasize where that undercut is. The more pressure. Where that shadow is. Line weight away. A little bit more tone. Pardon me as I turn this upside down a bit here. A sound system up on top, just really quick little gesturely sketches. Kind of get more detail to it, and that's it, right? Look at that, how it all came together. Because the middle spot has an inverted light source, light scheme. I feel like the light is acting weird on. Yeah, it is, because you're getting a compound shape going from direct light to reflected light and so forth. So there's more to it than just, again, notice how we really understand how the surfaces work and the geometry is operating. So it all works together there, Brett, and you're right, that'll do some odd things in this surface. Let's go back in through here. Let's go back into this. Let's get through it again. Real lucid, very quick. Let's put a bit of shadow drop in this guy. Into this cylinder. Little design line. And again, a little bit of a texture change. Let's do this. Pardon me. I'm going to turn this upside down just for a moment. And again, a little bit of tone up on top. And there it is. Some little thumbnail. See how that works there, Brett? Little spot is an unburned. Yep, there it is. Let's go back here again. Tone. Again, a little side of pencil, get that shape to work. Very subtle on this side. I want to get real minimal with this guy, Brett. Let's see what happens here. Look how we can influence that form by understanding what the shapes are doing here. So let's hope that this, and by the way, Doc, there's a sound of flowing water, this contortion coming from your stream. It doesn't bother me, but just thought it, sounds like that's good. That's odd because I can't detect it on this end at all, Brad. Thanks for pointing that out. By the way, how was your digital drawing experience with the idea? That's good. Coming along very well. I'm learning how to put that. I'm taking some really great giant steps and putting it together. Hopefully sometime next week I'll start doing some digital stuff as well. So we'll put together some pieces for you there. So does that sound any better, Brad, or is it still on the? Does that sound still coming through just a bit? All right, so there's another plate. There's the third phase of just doing some little form studies for this whole idea of getting a new elect is still the same. That's odd. I'm not hearing it at this end at all. Very strange. Okay, I'm just keep as long as it doesn't come to. That's the last one at least. Let's do a little pass through for some very quick little just ballpoint pen sketches here. Let's come back in. Oh, pardon me. There's a family of very quick little thumbnail sketches here, Brett. I can record it if you want. I don't mind it really. I can record it if you want. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to have to hear what that sounds like because I'm not getting anything at this end at all. So hopefully it doesn't bother you. That's terrible to know. Anyway, let's carry on here and get this guy wrapped up here. These are just, again, very simple little theme sketches or form studies based on getting some of these shapes put together. And for what it's worth, we'll just kind of take a look at a couple of more little tone exercises here. Keep them nice and simple and go through the process here. Again, just tone it in. Underneath it. Very simple. A little bit of a tone change here. A bit of a form study here. Just really simple, minimal, real soft, organic shapes here. Just to kind of work, just get a theme down. There we are. Let's bring this up to speed here. It's really quick little gesturely sketches here that really make hopefully an impact. It's getting an idea down, just enough to strengthen the shape and form. Again, very, very rapid little studies here in terms of putting together a concept. Let's go to the side of pencil, tone it through. Pick up the undercut here. Indicate where the light source is coming from. Again, notice how it's really quick and rapid. The one at the bottom looks there. Yeah. And last but not least, just a real fast little theme study here, going through this shape into that accent and out of the accent. Let's get that little design line change in here. Let's really put this together. Little design feature. And the highlight again. And more tone underneath here.
YMCA 2021. I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
Again, a little more contour change here. And it's upside down a bit here. A little bit more drawing definition into it.
Oh, I should have did that. Damn it.
And there's another family of forms right there, gang. There it is. I like that shape the most. Hey, Pixel, how are you? Thank you. Good to join you. And thanks for joining the forces here, Pixel. I just went ahead and finished up some little thumbnail sketches here on just basic ideas for Alexa sound system. So it's been very interesting and looking at all together. Hey, how you doing there, Pixel? Good to have you on board here. Just wrapping up a series of concept sketches here on just some little speaker systems for Alexa. So again, it's a typical dot, but we want to go back in today's stream and just go back into basic thumbnail sketches and get some ideation things down. And really interesting how it all comes together. Can we make Alexa speak? Yeah, we can make Alexa speak. How you doing, Brad? Everything going well? Again, I'm thankful that you've been able to join us today here, Brad. I'm not concerned, but I'm really glad you're doing well and looking at some very interesting things here that you're going to come about. I know you've been very busy, so again, thank you so much for taking it really to another level here. So keep practicing at it, keep working at it. And I'm going to go back into a quick review here of where we were. There's one, there's two, there's three. Let's go back and look at where we started here. This is plate one. We came back in and did the following. Just a nice series of little shape studies. Pixel, for your benefit, just going back to a bit of a review here. Just interesting how two things really to work on today's stream. As I said I think it was on Tuesday, we wrapped up some instrument panel material, some rendering formats, and it was good to see that coming up to some technique and media works. But I think going back into today's stream, going right back down to fundamental thinking in terms of putting together geometry, how to understand the structure. Then once the structure is established with cylinders, cones, and some of the geometric solids, going back in and just doing a nice series. And doing this here, a little thumbnail sketches, add a little bit of value and tone, color and texture to it to give it some character and animation. So this is the first family we did here. Make sure I sign these guys as I go through them. That was plate number 1, just looking at ways to look at breaking up the surfaces and adding some interest to them, being a concept of future Alexa system here. That was plate 1. Plate 2, we kind of went from the organic side to a little bit more of the geometric side, where it became much more of a cube-like process. We went to a full little sketch rendering of this guy, and then into a little minimal piece there, and stretched the paradigm down below with a little bit of a real interesting offset here to work with, then back to more of a vertical piece with the same kind of process here. Let's see, now we're going to go to phase 3. The third plate we did was this one, going back in and looking at, for example, going back to some what I refer to as like really offset cylinder or conical forms. Difficult to work with, and back to 2 cones side by side, but adding a little conical shape up on top. And the idea here throughout the entire stream was to take advantage of looking at the geometric solids and working with them to change them and to combine them in such a fashion that creates newness. And again, that's the structural side of understanding what the forms are doing. These are conical shapes, cylindrical shapes. They're everyday forms that we can work with. And again, looking back at the Alexa dot system, yes, it's nice, it's very compact, but is there something we can do to make it a little more mysterious and interesting in terms of design or concept work? So that was the third plate we did. And then the last one we just wrapped up was just, again, another abstraction of changing, again, conical to conical, cylinder, and then cylinder to cones. Again, combining the shapes, looking at what the structure is doing, which allows us to understand how to render and illustrate the surfaces, where to place light source, and all begins to function together. So today's stream, to wrap up the week, was primarily going back to just fundamental principles of just basic drawing skills. And I'd love to do that every now and then. I think it's really an advantage or an extremely powerful thing to go back to. You can advance all you wish to, doing renderings and so forth, and using a lot of different media, but it's always great to go back and do some just basic drawing systems to make sure that everything remains fresh. So all that to say, I really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today, especially Brett. I mean, really thank you for hanging on here. Great to see you all again, and it's great to have you on board. And as I said earlier in our session, never give up, because I can understand you're very busy, but you're not inadequate. You're learning how to go through a very delicate process. Not a problem at all. Thanks for reminding me that I had a few. Yeah, it's so proud. It's good to have you back on board. And Pixel, thank you for joining us here. That's good. Never give up on drawing. I don't either. I practice all the time, Brad, so it makes a huge difference. So all that to say, gang, thank you so much for joining forces today. And if I've done something right, let me know. Please drop me a note at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. If I've said something right, let me know. If I've said something wrong, please let me know. And then if you've got some things that you want me to work on or to go through, I'd be more than happy to work with you on some things here. So once again, thank you so much. And it's an honor to be a part of the process there, to work with you. And I thank you for taking the time to tune in, Brett and Pixel. Always great to have you on board. Thank you. And last but not least, I'll sign off with this comment, because I think it's so critical. Every time we go through the process, it's the most important part of the entire stream. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you certainly are. Thanks very much, gang. All the very best. To look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 2:30. We'll get back on a normal schedule. I had a bit of a schedule conflict yesterday. Wasn't able to go through it. So we'll kind of change gears on Tuesday and do some pretty dramatic stuff coming up here. So I'm looking forward to it, gang. So thank you again for joining forces. To each one of you, all the very best. Take care of yourself and have an enormous weekend, and all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye now.